Howdy folks, and welcome back. Today, we are going to be continuing our exploration of Aquology by talking about the basic board setup. Now, this was requested via the Discord, so if you have any recommendations, please obviously feel free to join us there. Now, this won't be a super long video, and I'm not going to be going over all of the rules just yet. That will obviously be its own video in totality. This is just to help get you a sense of what the board layout will look like once you actually start playtesting. Every game has a board setup, and obviously Aquology is no different. So, what does the board layout actually look like? Well, to start, there are three main locations. You have your active spot, the reserves, and then the persistent slots. Your deck and discard can go on either the left or right, and you can have your discard above or below your deck, but they must be in the same side and be visible to your opponent at all times. The mutagen markers will be in between you and your opponent's active slot. These can be in a bag, 3 different bowls, or just sort of in the center. It's really up to you and your opponent where it goes, but it must be easily accessible and visible to both individuals. Finally, you have your bank. Now, this is where your current amount of mutagen markers kind of are. This should typically be near your reserves. While your opponent can, of course, ask to know how many of any one color you might have, you as the player are not necessarily required to make every token visible. That being the case, though, you also can't hide set tokens. Pretty much what I mean is you could stack them like poker chips if you wanted. So let's do a speed run through each specific board slot, starting with the active slot. This is where your active fish is. They are the only ones that are going to be actively allowed to attack, and once you use said attack, your turn will end. Based on your fish's abilities and other cards in play, though, you will be able to attack either your opponent's active slot or fish in their reserves. And of course, other effects will come into play at this point. The reserves are where, well, the reserve fish are. Here, your fish wait to be placed into the active slot, or you will keep them here for their effect purposes. You have 4 reserve slots. Fish in the active and reserve can switch out, but the specifics to that rule are still being worked out. Just because a fish is in the reserve does not mean it still can't get hit. Eggs will also be placed in the reserve while they are waiting to be mutated. Eggs can be hit, but there are several ability in cards that negate most damage to eggs. Next, we have the 2 persistent slot. Each slot is on either side of the active location. Which card you put where does not matter. These cards' effects are always in play, and they can affect you, your opponent, or both at the same time. If you have 2 in play and want a third, you must discard one of your current active persistence cards. You can never have more than 2 persistence cards active at any one time. Your opponent is also able to remove them from play with their own abilities. So, in total, the max amount of persistence effects on the field at once will never be higher than 4. Then we have the deck and discard. Fairly standard on what they are. The deck is your deck. I don't really know how else to describe it outside the stack of cards you're going to be playing with. Deck size is currently unknown as I'm messing around with different numbers from 40 to 60. Decking out, though, is not an instant loss, much like how not having anything in the active slot and nothing in the reserves is not, it's in and of itself, an instant loss either. Rather, your opponent will simply accumulate victory points each turn you don't have a fish in the active slot or you don't have anything to draw from your deck. This is to allow for some semblance of a comeback. Now, will decking out become an instant win in the future after playtesting? Yeah, absolutely. The discard pile is where all cards that have been removed from play go. Cards here can, through abilities, be returned to play, your hand, or your deck. And finally, we have the bank. This is not necessarily a specific place on the board, as there aren't any cards that go in this location. Rather, the bank is what is being referred to when dealing with the mutagen tokens in your possession. Mutagen is added and removed from the bank based on mutating eggs into fish or other abilities. So when a card is referring to your bank, it's really referring to the mutagens that are within your possession. And really, that's it for the standard board setup of Aquology. We'll talk about VP in a later video when we go over win conditions, but VP, for the most part, can be tracked using paper and pencil, a D20 die, or a counter on your phone. For now, though, as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is incredibly appreciated, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!